nitwit, blubber, oddment, tweak. Hello, everybody. To our new listeners, welcome. To our old listeners, welcome back. We are the Perspective Potterheads, Jenny B and Terri T, and we are here to discuss our favorite fandoms, starting with and primarily featuring Harry Potter content. So if you like our content, like it, and if you love it, share, subscribe, and support.
Today, we will be talking about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 7, The Sorting Hat. Oh, I'm so excited! While we're going to be talking about Chapter 7, we will be talking about the whole book, the whole series, lots of facts and things sprinkled in, so you will hear stuff that is definitely spoilers. So if you have not read the books, definitely read them and then follow along.
This is our first glimpse inside of Hogwarts.
I'm so excited. I have most of my notes center around setting, where I'm usually really character heavy. And I did note some characters, we meet some new people, but I'm really big on how Rowling sets the stage in this chapter. It is just her use of descriptors. And again, this is me completely nerding out, but the way she writes and the descriptions she creates gives me this beautiful mental image, better than any movie.
So I am the opposite in this. Normally when I read, when people get into too much detail, my mind when I'm reading just kind of fuddles out. I read better and I understand more when it's dialogue, when there's a just back and forth with the quotations. I take that in more. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Yeah, but my first note on here I have is that McGonagall does a pretty good job presenting herself as stern but welcoming and representing all of the houses on kind of an equal level. She doesn't there's no house is better than the other one. Each one has its own noble and has produced several prominent wizards and stuff like that. So I was she did a really good job staying neutral in houses.
She does. My first note, actually, I have that, but it's halfway down the page.
Oh, geez.
I was so excited for this chapter. I'm going to be honest. So my first note is McGonagall with her stern face. She is, her hair's back in a bun. She has a stern face, but she is kind and she's, welcoming. But I like that the entrance hall is so big, it could fit the Dursleys' whole house. And as we've discussed before, the Dursleys have a pretty big house. They got a 4-bedroom house. That's good size. So this entrance hall is vast. And I love, she didn't just say, this is a big room. She said it's large enough to fit the Dursleys' whole house. Again, just writing and semantics, that sort of stuff. I like that kind of descriptors. The marble staircase is magnificent. Oh, I can just picture it in my head. Me, complete nerd, but loving this. But I like that the chamber that they go into, they're all this grandeur, and then they're stuffed in this little room where they're standing a little bit closer together than they really would like to be. They're all kind of squished in. And then Harry's how do they sort us? McGonagall's given this, we're going to sort you into houses kind of thing. And Harry's how's that going to happen? And Ron's Fred says it hurts a lot.
Right. There is, I almost think it reminds me of a sorority. Were you in any sororities in college?
I was not. We did not have Greek life at my college.
So I was, and they do, it's an initiation type of thing. And it's that kind of, it's nerve-wracking. At least in mine, they blindfolded us. You're not supposed to talk about what goes on in this, so I'm not going to go into super detail, but I will just say that they blindfolded us in our sorority. And it's one of those things about you have to have faith in your sisters type of thing. And that's just kind of what it seems like in this, you don't know what you're going into, and nobody tells you ahead of time what happens. And that's just very similar to this, is all of that anxiety, what's going on, we don't know. And none of his brothers or parents, nobody gives them any warning at all. Even Malfoy doesn't know. which is why I thought of it as because Ron's parents, like, they won't tell him things. They don't tell him like about the Triwizard Tournament coming, and it's because it's supposed to be secret, but Malfoy knows. So in this, since Malfoy didn't even know what to expect, I figured this has to be a sacred rite of passage.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of reminded me of the sororities.
It is interesting. That's a good comparison because they all are like, and Hermione's like rattling off her spells. Like, I wonder if I'll need to use this one or this one or this one or this one. Like, and that's just making everybody else even more nervous because they don't know anything yet. I do love that Harry mentions that he was never been so nervous, even the time he had to bring home a note saying he accidentally turned his teacher's wig blue.
Yes, that's my next note too. Because for one, how do you pin down the fact that he turned my wig blue? Like,
I thought the same thing. Like, how did they know it was Harry?
Yeah. And then, like, what did that teacher do to make Harry turn his wig blue? Because let's be honest, like, none of the teachers are great. We talked about that in the first chapter, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But this one must have really been bad for Harry to just like subliminally turn his hair blue.
Yeah.
And then we see the ghosts come through.
I know, that's my next note too. Like, the ghosts, we get to see the ghosts. There's about 20 or so ghosts, which that's quite a lot of ghosts. Like, I mean, Hogwarts is a pretty big castle, but that's a lot of ghosts for the castle.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's here or if it's somewhere else in my notes, but just like why ghosts want to go to Hogwarts. Like, after you die, you're just like, I think I'll go back to school, hang out with some kids.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, Myrtle, we know, tries to haunt somebody.
Right. And then like, she applies to banish her back into the bathroom.
But they can go other places because they go to, like, in book 2, the Death Day party. He's got lots and lots of ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because, like, differences in just how ghosts are. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Ghosts. It's new. It's really, really funny. But the ghosts all live in this house because that's where they died. So that was the reason that and they're stuck on that property. They can't leave the property. So you're a ghost where you died.
I don't remember if it was in the Harry Potter series or in another series, possibly Supernatural, but like, they talk about ghosts are allowed to travel only in places that they've been when they were alive.
I don't think that's a Harry Potter thing. Although for any witch or wizard, it would be Hogwarts would be most likely Hogwarts would be a thing.
Yeah. And I could definitely see why the Grey Lady would want to be there because her mom was one of the founders.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bloody Baron just is kind of stalky or like,
he's stalking her.
Yeah. So, but
I do have a note on the ghosts. And we've discussed this a little bit, but the Fat Friar, like, again, just another character that fat is part of the name.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I'm not sure why, but again, my heart-shaped glasses kind of person says you need, like, she's trying to give a visual.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, with describing somebody as fat, I mean, it's not necessarily a derogatory term. I'm fat, but it's like, it's not a derogatory thing. Like, that is a description of me, but it's not my identity.
See, you know what I mean? Describe you as curvy.
Curvy. I like that better. So, it is a bit more of an hour shaped glass.
Mm-hmm.
Hourglass shape. There we go. I was like, I know I said that wrong, but I couldn't figure it out in my mind. I'm like, wait a second. But I was thinking about the Fat Friar too for a second because he's a friar, like a monk.
Mm-hmm.
And generally people who are monks or nuns or religious don't have that fear of the afterlife because that's what they practice, that they know there's a beyond. And then, but the Fat Friar is like, stays. So there's some sort of part of him that was just too afraid of the afterlife and wanted to stay. And I just thought that was intriguing. And I just want to know more about him in his death type of thing and what made him.
Ooh. I wonder if there's anything on Pottermore or
probably
whatever it is now.
When we're all done with like the whole series, we're going to have to just go into Pottermore and like just do articles based
10 years
on
from now.
characters. Yeah.
I did go in and read the thing on owls in there because I was looking to see if they gave any specifications when we talked about Hedwig, like why did he pick that name? And it was supposed to be from History of Magic. So I wanted to see if there was something that was like, that gave Hedwig's name as to why he like who Hedwig was, but there wasn't anything. It was just about like owls in general. So we also get to meet another ghost who talks, but we don't have his name yet. He's the ghost with a ruff and tights,
which we later know as Nick.
Yep. Sir Nicholas. So my next note again is setting, because I love the set, the stage. Never been somewhere so strange and splendid. And I love that description of the Great Hall. You know, thousands of floating candles, the 4 long house tables, glittering gold plates and goblets, and then the ceiling.
Yeah,
the ceiling looks like this. It looks like there's not even a ceiling. It looks like it just opens up into the heavens.
That would be so cool.
And I do not like. I know we're gonna do the whole movie thing.
Yeah.
In the movie, you can see the stars and the stuff in the ceiling, but you can also still see like the beams. That's not the way it is in the book. That was something I picked up the last time we watched it with the kids. This is also, I think, where we start with the book that I want Rowling to write. Hogwarts, a history.
Yes.
I read about it in Hogwarts, a history. And now. It's the Sorting Hat. Sorry.
Maybe they have to pull a rabbit out of it. I love that is Harry's first thing. Like every time I read it, it just makes me giggle. Like, oh, muggles. Like,
that's what I thought. That's such a muggle thing to think.
Yes. And then there's the sorting song.
Love the sorting song.
It gives us a good glimpse into what the houses are. And I think, I don't know, like part of me, it's very fluffy. There are parts of it that are filled with like not as many descriptors of the house, and like that it fills with rhyme instead. Like pretty much Gryffindor, they're brave at heart, they're daring, they're nerve, they're chivalrous. Hufflepuffs are just, loyal, patient, true, and unafraid of toil. Ravenclaws, they're wise, ready-minded, wit, and learning. And then Slytherins are cunning, and they use any means to achieve their end. Like it's like it starts off with all of these adjectives, and then it's like we get to Slytherin, and there's like they're 2 things.
Well, so Slytherins are also very much considered. I don't want to say it negatively because there are Slytherins that are not, but it's self first. And that's really hard to put in a song. Like they think about themselves first.
Right. And there's a thing to it as far as being selfish and but also there's a point where you have to put yourself first if you want to take care of others and having that self-love. So there's a difference in how you put yourself first. Because sometimes when I put myself first, I feel like I'm being selfish, but then I have to remind myself, no, this is part of self-care. And where is that line? And women, I think, always feel like whenever they put themselves first for self-care, that it's being selfish.
Yes, that is.
I know maybe quite a few men who feel like that too, but I feel like there's a bit more generally in women.
And I would say even more so when you add in the word mom.
Yeah.
Because there are little people that need you. And it's hard. Like, do I do this thing with the kiddos? Like, do I go for a run or do I make Valentine's boxes? And somehow you got to squeeze in both. So maybe the Valentine's box has a little more pre-made stickery things on them and a lot less dinosaur craziness, which I ended up into. And the run gets shortened. Like, you got to strike a balance.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll probably touch on this several times just because it's part of our repertoire. But the mom guilt thing is real. And I'm not saying that dads don't have that too. Right. It's just, I'm not a dad, so I can't speak to that. I'm Mom.
I feel like if there was like Harry says, a house for people who feel a bit queasy. Like, yeah, that sounds about right. Like, I would probably be in that house if they made such a house.
I know, right? And this is a great like introduction to characters that we're going to get to know later on.
Yes.
They're characters, some of them we don't see again in this chapter or in this book at all. Like they're not mentioned. And some of them are mentioned very randomly throughout the series, but not often.
Right. There are some, like sometimes she names their full names and sometimes she names just their last names.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like some of these people, we don't even hear from them ever again. Mandy Brocklehurst, Lisa Turpin. I think most of them we do hear from. Morag McDougal, Sally Ann Perks, the last name of Mocha. I don't know any of those people.
Ooh, not Parkinson. So not we see again in book 5. Terry Boot, again, book 5. Parkinson, we see her a lot.
Yeah.
Perks. Never hear from her again. Mm-mm. You kind of wonder, like, some of them, they don't say what house they're like. Moon and Perks. What house are they in? I want to know.
Yeah. And like, I was wondering too, as when they all get sorted, like if you add them all up, like we don't know where some of them go. It doesn't say. And some of them, even if it doesn't say, we know later. Like we know Patil and Patil, one of them's in Ravenclaw, one of them's in Gryffindor.
Mm-hmm. Parkinson and Knott are Slytherins.
Right. But like we don't know where Morag McDougal or Moon or Sally Ann Perk go. But everybody else we figure out, like, and total there's about 8 Gryffindors, 3 Hufflepuffs, 4 Ravenclaws, and 7 Slytherins. So there's about 25 kids total in Harry's year. So,
and if you think about that, that's for an entire country.
Yeah.
It's a very small number.
It is.
As I'm thinking, like, my children are in a class of 20-ish kids. I think somewhere between 17 and 19 is where we're at with my kiddos. They're in kindergarten, 2nd, and 5th grade. But they're not the only class. Like, there are, I want to say 6 kindergarten classes, something like that. And we live, I mean, it's not like we live in a big city.
Yeah.
But I think we talked about this before with the war.
Yeah.
There weren't as many children born.
Yeah. And I was wondering if, because it seems a little bit like that. Well, not that we get to see too much of the other characters out of Harry's year, a couple here or there. But it just makes me think, like, are they always that small in numbers? Is this why some of the wizards complain about the Muggles so much? Because I think at some point they mention the Muggles got, like, you know, the Muggle wars and stuff like that back in the day when there was all the witch burning and stuff. And so that reduced their numbers, or is it just always kind of a smaller sect?
I don't know.
Anyway, like it's like the wizarding world's just not as big as we think it is. And
I feel like it is small. Like there's a small number.
Yeah, just like in the general population of the world, like how much of that population is wizards?
I'm gonna say like a very, very, very tiny amount.
Like 1%.
Which is why we're Muggles.
Yeah. But like, so like if there's only 25 kids in Harry's year, and if they divide out in between 4 different houses, and like Hufflepuff has only 3 people, like, you think there's ever years where it's just like, hey, we don't have any new Hufflepuffs this year?
I don't think so. And there's got to be more Hufflepuffs.
I don't know.
Because they don't mention Ernie, do they?
They don't. No, they don't.
So there's at least one more that Harry does that isn't mentioned. Because it's Ernie, Hannah, Justin.
Susan, Justin, yeah.
They mentioned Susan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for such a small number, it's interesting that Harry doesn't know them. Like when they start the DA, he's like, I think her name is Susan Bones. Like, there's 25 of you. How do you not know her name?
Right. Especially because like they have certain classes with the Slytherin, certain classes with the Hufflepuffs. There are only 25 total. Like
they don't have any with the Ravenclaws, though.
Do they not?
They do not. But Ginny's year has Transfiguration with the Ravenclaws.
Mm.
Or something with the Raven. Maybe it's not Transfiguration, but because her and Luna are in classes together.
Right.
Which I think is cool. We see another glimpse of Harry's life with the Dursleys in that he always had to be chosen last because nobody wanted anyone to think they liked Harry because of Dudley.
Yeah.
Which is sad. Being chosen last for a team is sad. I was lacking in athletic skills as a young child. And I was also like half the size of my classmates in elementary school. So unless it was my friend that was a team captain, I probably got chosen last too.
Yeah.
I had those experiences. It's not very athletic.
I don't ever remember, but like if I was picked last, it never seemed to bother me because it's nothing that I super remember like being ashamed of.
I just know that I like lacked athletic skills. So nobody really wanted me on their team, which is fine because I didn't really want to be on the team anyway. I would have much rather read a book. I do like that the last person we meet is to get sorted as Blaise. These 2 pages of my book keep sticking together because my book is old. So I keep flipping past what I wanted. I love that when they say Harry's name, like Potter, the Harry Potter.
Harry Potter?
And he's like whispers, and then everything goes black because the hat's too big on all these little kids.
Every single one of them, it covers their eyes, it says.
Which means Godric Gryffindor had to have a huge head. Because I'm like, my 11-year-old could wear one of my hats without it covering her eyes. She actually does. Yeah. She'll be 11 here in a couple months. She actually does wear my hats quite frequently, especially my winter hats. So Godric Gryffindor had a big head. That's mine.
That seems like kind of fitting with the Gryffindor.
So I love that Fred and George are like, we got Potter.
Yes, I know. They just love bragging about it. And I mean, honestly, if Slytherins had them, they would probably be shouting it too.
Probably. At whatever house, they'd be, bragging about it.
Oh, yeah.
I do like this part is where we get a glimpse of inside of Harry's head, which is kind of cool. So he's sitting there and everything's gone black. So it says, said a small voice in his ear. Difficult, very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent. Oh my goodness, yes. And a nice thirst to prove yourself. Now that's interesting. So where shall I put you? And Harry's like, oh my God, no, not Slytherin. Like all he can think is not Slytherin. And I love that the hat has a dialogue with them. So it's like, not Slytherin, eh? Said the small voice. Are you sure? You could be great, It's all here in your head. And Slytherin will help you on your way to greatness. No doubt about that. No? Well, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor. So I love that Harry's desire to prove himself is what makes the hat want to put him in Slytherin.
Mm-hmm.
Like that desire to prove that he belongs.
I thought isn't part of it because he has that piece of Voldemort in him that makes him want to be, or that the hat sees within him?
I think so, because there are several they go into detail of this in book 2 with his similarities, and they think he might be the heir of Slytherin. He has, but Harry, where I think there is ambition. It's not ambition for the sake of ambition. It's not I want to be the best. It's I want to make sure I fit in, because he's never fit in anywhere.
Yeah.
At least to me, that's what I see.
So my next notes are about Dumbledore. And he gets up there and says his words. Nitwit, blubber, oddment, tweak. Okay.
And like, I love Harry's reaction.
Is he mad?
Is he mad? Really? That was what he said. And I love Percy's response. Percy's like, he's the greatest wizard there is. But yeah, he's a bit mad. Here, have some potatoes.
Yeah. And then Harry just like, oh my God, there's food here.
The next line makes me a little sad. Like the next like little section. Because he says he'd never seen so many things he liked to eat in one place. And then he says they never exactly starved him.
Yeah.
But if he wanted it, Dudley was going to take it, even if it made him sick. And that just...
Could you imagine Dudley in the Great Hall? Like... But what does like nitwit, blubber, oddment, tweak? Like, is that just to show his eccentricity, or like there's a theory that talks about how it's about hurtful nicknames of the houses, but to me it just doesn't make sense. Like, and why would he even bring that up?
Mm-mm.
And then I was thinking maybe because we learn later that the house elves are the ones responsible for the meals. Maybe those are names of house elves in the kitchen. And that's like, hey, and each one's like responsible for a table. And then so they...
I don't know. I just think it's kind of one of those, Dumbledore does odd things that don't make sense to anybody throughout the book, like throughout the series. Like Dumbledore does weird things. And this one, I don't think there ever becomes a broader meaning to, but a lot of them have broader meaning later on.
Yeah.
But I will just say that Dumbledore is eccentric, and that's okay. He can be eccentric. Like, that's fine with me. I don't need a meaning for it. I just think it's nuts. And I think it's a good illustration here. Like, I think Rowling's trying to prove a point. She's trying to give us a taste of what Dumbledore's personality is. Like the lemon drops in the first chapter. Here, have a lemon drop. Like, this is not the time for lemon drops. He has that silliness about him, which balances, because he is this, if he didn't have that like silliness, he would be incredibly intimidating. He would like, imagine if he had more of a McGonagall personality with his extreme ability.
Yeah.
He needs that approachability, I think. And I think these little like tidbits of silliness give him that.
Okay.
That's my take. My perspective.
Yeah.
I also like that we learned that Nick is 4,000 years old. He hasn't eaten. I think he says he hasn't eaten in... Wait a minute. I think I found 400? A discrepancy.
I thought it was 400. Yeah.
Maybe. Is it 400?
Yeah. I haven't eaten in nearly 400 years.
I wrote an extra zero. Boo. But that's not quite right. Because they celebrate his 500th death day next year.
Ah, good point.
I was like, wait, 4,000? No, 400.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you have messy handwriting. Sorry, guys. 400 years, but he will celebrate his 500th death day next year. So, little discrepancy.
Like, and even though he doesn't seem to want to answer any of their questions about him being nearly headless because he prefers Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, like he has like this smile afterwards, like ha.
So then they move on to, we meet the Bloody Baron, who is sitting next to Malfoy, which I think is funny.
Do you think all of the ghosts are just kind of hang out with the first years on the first day to get a feel for him?
Just kind of like, hey, like, because it's a good way for them to like feed information. Because Nick's like, I hope you guys are up for the challenge. We need to defeat the Slytherins. They've had the House Cup for years. I wonder what the Fat Friar's talking about with the Hufflepuffs, or if the Grey Lady is even talking to the Ravenclaws, because she seems a little reserved.
Haughty. Yeah. And like Seamus in the bathroom crying because she wasn't invited. So Seamus asks about the Bloody Baron. He says, how did he get covered in blood? And Nick's like, I've never asked. And like, then it's just kind of drop it. And it's just like a one-line thing that we don't think about again.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes back in.
We do find out.
Yeah, we find out in book 7. And it's like one of those things, but by the time we get that answer, we didn't even know that we wanted, that we had that question still.
So they're having dessert.
Mm-hmm.
And they're discussing family.
Yes.
And I love Seamus. Like, he's just like, it's a bit of a nasty shock for him.
Now Neville's is very, he avoids mentioning his parents.
Yeah, and he completely.
And he just starts rambling on. And I think it's part of that is to distract from the point of him having to mention his parent situation. So he just talks, because everybody else is like a one-liner, like, half and half, but, or 2 lines. And then, well, what about you, Neville? Like, Neville doesn't even bring it up. Like, somebody has to ask him about it to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just goes and talks about Great Uncle Algie, who is he's hanging him out the window. He almost drowned once. And they are so excited when he's bouncing down the road. It's like, come on.
I'm like, he dropped him out of an upstairs window. Poor Neville. Like,
right. But everybody was so pleased. Like, I guess that's not as dramatic since everybody was so happy about it. And then he was able to make them happy. And they say he calls himself all Muggle, that they were afraid he would be all Muggle, which, knowing his background, coming from families of wizards, he knows he's pureblood, but we don't have the term squib yet.
Yes.
That doesn't come till next book. So, but he should know.
Yeah.
About this term squib.
What also makes no sense is in book 5, when the Death Eaters escape, they say the wizarding community grew up knowing those names.
Mm-hmm.
How, like, and Dumbledore says in the Pensive in book 5 that the Longbottoms were very popular. And so when they were attacked, there was a lot of backlash. And one of the reasons that there was a lot of pressure and anger towards them.
Yeah.
Towards the Death Eaters. So I don't understand how Seamus and Ron don't know what happened. Ron, I can kind of get, because Ron isn't paying much attention to outside.
Yeah. I think part of that is because it happened around the same time as Harry's defeat of Voldemort. Mm-hmm. So Harry's probably got more publicity, and because it was such a positive thing too, but because Neville's thing was so tragic, people just probably want to forget about that because it was so horrific.
Okay, we'll give it. I'll take that. I just kind of go, like, tragedy usually engenders a lot of remembrance.
Right.
Typically, we like the tragic.
And their parents probably know and still remember all of it, but it probably wouldn't be something that you tell your kids about. So their parents probably didn't bring it up to the kids because of how horrible it was, and they probably don't want anything like that to happen to them and have their kids worry about that type of stuff. Why? I don't think we asked this when we were talking about Nick, but why was he beheaded? Why would somebody want to kill him?
I don't think we ever find out.
Yeah.
In the whole series, I don't think they ever. There is, because when I looked up the owl thing, there is a thing on ghosts. So I have some ghost questions, especially after this chapter. I might go look at that.
Do you know what? Sorry, I just skipping over a note here. Do you know what peppermint humbugs are?
I have no idea what peppermint humbugs are.
I meant to look that up and I didn't look that up. The same thing with Yorkshire pudding. I know that that's a thing, but I just don't know what it is because I don't think it's American.
It is very British food.
It's a very British food. Not that it's not American, but I don't see too many people here eating that.
I want to say it's like a breadish kind of thing, and there's gravy.
That doesn't sound like a pudding to me.
Pudding isn't pudding.
Well, I mean, a dessert. It still doesn't sound like a dessert.
I don't think
it's got bread and gravy.
No. That was in with the dinner stuff.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Yorkshire pudding.
Yeah, and peppermint humbugs.
I think they're like these bread things, I believe.
I should have Googled it first.
So I love Gordon Ramsay. And we were watching Kitchen Nightmares, and I think they made Yorkshire pudding.
Oh, okay.
One of them. Because, I like all things British. So he was doing like British restaurants. So it was really fun. So after the discussion on families, we meet someone new.
Yes.
Hook nose, sallow skin, greasy black hair. And when he looks at Harry, his scar hurts.
Now, he's talking to Quirrell, and he's looking past his turban, which means that Quirrell has his head facing away from Harry. So the turban, now is Voldemort already there in the back of his head? Because he's got the turban on. But still, Voldemort is under the turban. So how can he sense? Does he sense that Harry's looking at him? Because he obviously can't see him all wrapped up in that thing. Or is it just coincidence because he's near?
Maybe Voldemort's thinking murderous thoughts. It's more based on his scar thing is based more on mood for Voldemort.
So if Quirrell is talking with Snape, and Snape used to be one of his close Death Eaters, maybe Snape said something to him that was something he didn't like. I don't know.
Yeah. And this is we get some things that are set up, and it's something that repeats throughout the book or the series in this one. Well, everyone knows he's after Quirrell's job. Knows an awful lot about the dark arts. It sets up Snape, and it's very easy, knowing what we know now and knowing about Snape and his whole story and stuff. But if not knowing that, it sets Snape up to be the bad guy. And I love it because it's so much the diversion that when you get to that end and they're and he's like, no, it's supposed to be Snape. And you're thinking the same thing as the reader, no, it's supposed to be Snape.
Yeah, Snape is the red herring through this, and Harry blames him on everything in every other book. And then when Hermione is like, won't you give up? It's not Snape already. Then it is Snape. And then it turns out Snape did it because he, Yeah. It's fun. It's fun to play with things like that.
Snape is an incredibly complex character. And I think the next chapter is the Potions Master. So I'm sure we'll discuss Snape in more detail and some of our thoughts on him later. But Snape is just complex, and you want to hate him, but you can't quite hate him. Can't quite. I don't like him.
Right.
But I can't hate him. So start of term notices. Dumbledore, he needs to give some start of term notices. First years should note that the forest on the grounds is forbidden to all pupils, and a few of our older students would do well to remember that as well. And I like how he looks at the Weasley twins. Everybody knows they're trouble.
Right. What do you think they would do in the Forbidden Forest?
I don't know, but even Hagrid says he spent half his life chasing your brothers away from that forest.
Right. It's a bit of an exaggeration.
But it is, yeah.
But yeah.
This will be the first time that we hear this statement, but I think it's repeated at every start of term feast. I've also been asked by Mr. Filch, the caretaker, to remind you all that no magic should be used between classes in the corridors. I think in one of the books it even says what he tells me is the 57th time or something like that. I don't remember the exact number, but it was Quidditch trials will be held in the second week of term. Anyone interested in playing for their house team should contact Madam Hooch, which is different because later, anyone interested in playing for their house team should contact their head of house later on.
or their Quidditch captain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because or is it the head of house?
Head of house, in book 6, when Harry is captain, contact your head of house.
Okay.
And McGonagall said she had like a list of already so many kids, and
yeah,
he would pass it on to him, and he could set up trials at his leisure.
Yeah.
And then this is the big one. What we will, be working at for the second half of this book is, and finally, I must tell you that this year, the 3rd floor corridor on the right-hand side is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death.
Yep.
And then
Percy, yeah. And Percy gets all indignant. You'd think he would have told us prefix about this.
And he's not serious. And Percy's like, well, he must be.
Yeah.
So this is the only time after he gives his start of term notices, they sing the school song.
Thank God. I hate the school song.
You hate the school song?
It's so like this to me is like when her writing, like, this is so bad. Like, the song is horrible. It's a horrible attempt to try to make rhymes. It's like, who wrote this thing? It sounds like they had a thing, and they're like, which child can come up with the best school song for us? And then and probably they picked this, and then after this, they're like, we're not doing that anymore because it sucked. Like, because these words are like, what? Like,
see, I think it's hilarious. I think it adds humor, and I'm like,
interesting stuff.
I'm like, who wrote this? Probably Godric Gryffindor, because the Sorting Hat is Gryffindor's, and the Sorting Hat makes up horrible songs too.
Well,
so yeah. I picture Godric Gryffindor being like, I wrote a school song, because the motto for Hogwarts is "Don't tickle the sleeping dragon."
Yeah,
it just has to be silly. I like that Hogwarts is a silly place because it makes it more welcoming. It tempers the seriousness of it, at least to me. I like that. And I grew up and to give you reference, my mom is an incredibly silly person. She's very creative, very bubbly, very silly. And as a result, my house growing up was always very welcoming. And that's what I think of when I could see my mom writing the school song.
Oh, okay. I read this and I think of like my middle school English teachers and telling me that when you write things like things and stuff, like that they're very bad adjectives to use and you need to put a different one in there. Not that I've ever I say like all the time. I say a lot. I use words like stuff but it's a weird, it's not like my alma mater. My alma mater does not have words like things and stuff, No.
But if you think about it, I think of this as not so much an alma mater and more of a fight song. And the fight songs usually do have weird words and stuff because it's got a rhyme and you're like, you're all yelling crazy at the football game while you're. So I could see them singing the Hogwarts song at a Quidditch match. Or do you think they sing it at the Triwizard Tournament?
But it doesn't have a tune. Like, you just pick your own random tune, and like the Weasleys are doing like a funeral march to it. So it's like, yeah, that'll get them going. Fight. Like,
I don't know. I like it. This is one of those times where I'm just like, I like the silliness of it. Because the other thing that I have to remember is this is a children's book, whereas like the later books are very dark, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend them for children. Like, I can't wait till my kids can read this on their own. Like, I've read books 1 and books 2 to them. We're reading book 3. My 10, almost 11-year-old really enjoys it. My 7-year-old is hit or miss whether or not he wants to sit for it. My 5-year-old will listen for about 5 minutes because he likes to sit in my lap, and then he's off building with his Legos, but he's listening. My dad read these all to us. I read them before that, but that was like my favorite thing. And that's what I'm trying to recreate. I'm not as good of a read out loud person as my dad is. kind of sad. I would
There's
give
always the
anything to
audiobook.
just sit down and say, hey, Dad, read again. Read to me. Ooh. Next Christmas week.
There you go.
Dad, I think we could get through. If we had a week, my sister came to visit. We had a week with all of us at the house. I bet you Dad could read the whole book to us. Anyway, off topic there. But yeah, it's a children's book.
Yeah. Like the one thing that I do agree with Dumbledore, at the very least, is when he says, music, a magic beyond all we do here. Because music is definitely, I mean, and it's different strokes for different folks, you know, because everybody loves their own different style, but it's like whatever kind of, I think everybody could agree that there's at least some form of music that moves your soul. And for me, it's different songs at different times too. It's like whatever I need. Sometimes it's a different genre. Sometimes I'm listening to punk. Sometimes I'm listening to Christian rock. Like, I mean, it's all over the place. So if I'm feeling nostalgic, I'll throw on some Salt and Pepper. But like,
so like that is true. Like music is so instrumental for me. Like in just different things that I remember. You can picture, like if a song plays, you can picture the thing you were doing. So I'll give this. We've not come out and set our ages, but we date ourselves quite frequently.
Yeah.
But the song "Amazed" by Lone Star, I can vividly picture 15-year-old me, 4-H camp counselors, first year camp counselor, trying to be cool, but there's this cute boy. And we're not, like, as counselors, we're not supposed to outwardly show preference. Like, it's just not, like, we're trying to set a good example for the younger kids that we're watching. We're in charge. We're the grown-ups. Expecting me, 15-year-old me, to be a grown-up. But it was the last dance, the Camp Whitewood 4-H dance. And I got to dance with this boy. And I can still picture that night. I knew what I was wearing, my favorite jean shorts and a lime green tank top. Like, I can picture this in my head. Fast forward several years. And I'm dancing to that same song with that same boy at my wedding.
Aww.
There's music for you.
Aww.
The song still brings back both those memories, very vastly different memories, but that's music to me.
That's such a sweet story.
So yes, Dumbledore has some sage bits.
Yeah.
Often, very often, he has things. Him and Hagrid, a lot of life lessons.
Mm-hmm.
I like how he just kind of like, and now bedtime, off you trot. Go.
Yep. Get out of here. I think it sounds like this is where I get into the coolness of the castle, because you're talking about hidden doorways and passages and behind hanging tapestries and sliding panels. And to me, like, that just kind of brings up like this whole, I'm really big into like the murder mystery type of thing. Mm-hmm. And so when I hear things like that, it's like, what's there to discover, you know? And I don't know if it goes back to like Scooby-Doo. It's like the very earliest I can remember loving mysteries, because I, like, as an adult, I'm like, I know who did it, but when I was a kid, it's not as easy to figure out. Mm-hmm. And there's always a secret panel, and it's just so cool. And I've always wanted it. And like, there's that new show, Only Murders in the Building. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's a murder mystery with comedy. And it's got,
I might be able to handle that. Scooby-Doo is about as scary as I can
Steve
go.
Martin and Selena Gomez. And it's got all-star cast with all-star side characters too. Sting is in it. Nathan Lane is in it. And they do one episode where it is completely silent, because they're one of the main characters in that episode is deaf. And so it is so well done. I didn't even realize it, because they did such a good job with it. I didn't even realize that they went the whole thing without any dialogue. It was so phenomenal.
That's awesome. That sounds good.
Yeah, it is. I highly recommend it. But yeah, but yeah, that's just it. This just reconnects all of that kind of mystery and mystique, and what is there to discover. And we see Harry discover a bunch of stuff later too, which just gets it like, it's like you're unraveling all this stuff with him.
He becomes like so familiar with these secret passages and stuff like that, like that he can just navigate the castle very easily. But it, you know, you can't, I can imagine being a first year. It reminds me of freshman year of college, and at arguably a pretty small campus, but some of the buildings were a little weird. And I actually remember a good friend of mine in college and I, one evening, we had an evening class and we were there before the evening class, I think, or maybe it was even after, like we got out early, so the buildings were still open. And we were like running around the buildings because like a couple of them connected, but one connected over, one connected through the basement. So like we were like all over the building, like exploring. And that's what that reminds me of, is just like playing around, trying to figure out where everything was. And we're like, oh, I didn't know this computer lab was here. Oh, I didn't know this was here. Same thing like with the library, my favorite building on campus. There was always like little desks tucked back in the shelves. So you could go down, like there was one in the history section, which I used rather frequently. It was my favorite hiding spot. I'd take my snacks and my books and I'd go up there and it was just peace and quiet.
They had a library at Teal, and it was like they had an attic to the library. Like you had to like climb these rickety old stairs, and like the smell of the dust in the books, like
that smell.
You could just, I would love to just go back there, to just go up there again. Nobody ever went up there. It was like books that nobody ever read, some sort of, you know, random old encyclopedia type of things, like
my kind of books. That smell, that the library smell. And like the libraries around here, like I remember the old Carnegie Library. Our libraries now are too new.
Yeah, I miss the old library.
Oh, if I ever win the lottery, or if we like make millions, I want to buy the Carnegie Library and I want to put a coffee shop in it.
Restore it to its former glory.
Coffee shop, bookshop, bakery.
Well, we have that now. We got Root Down. That's
but it would be in the old Carnegie Library.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So my book nerd, and it would be like a bookshop. Like there would be like a used bookshop where books are super cheap. Anyway, pipe dreams.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful old building, and I'm sure it would take, knowing like what it takes to restore an old building with like codes and asbestos and lead and more asbestos and more lead and more asbestos and more lead.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
It's probably what's holding this thing up together.
So for all of you movie buffs, we're going to introduce a character that is not in the movies at all.
That's right.
And it's a very, very sad loss on the movie's part, because Peeves, the poltergeist.
I think Peeves doesn't add too much extra.
Not yet.
I mean, he doesn't push the plot around.
I think he adds an element of, again, I'm very much into the element of fun in these books. And while I think in the first several books, he's not phenomenal, although he's kind of the tripping point on them finding out what's in the third corridor, because that's the reason they go through the locked door, is they're running because Peeves has called Filch in the midnight duel. Yeah. So Peeves flips the trigger on a couple different things. Where I love Peeves, book 5.
Yeah, okay. It's worth it
he
for
chases
that.
her from the building, alternately smacking her with a sock filled with chalk and a walking stick. Like, where do you come up with this?
Peeves. And then McGonagall rues that she can't help him because she lent him the walking stick. Okay. For that alone, we miss out on Peeves, because that is a great scene.
And when he gets bored, he just floats along behind Umbridge, blowing raspberries every time she tries to speak. Like, Peeves is amazing. I do enjoy Peeves antics. He is not a main character, and no, he doesn't drive the plot. And I can see from a movie perspective, they've got to make this little man floating around. Like, yeah, he'd be hard to create. It'd be kind of like another Dobby situation. And I know the budget for the first movie, they weren't sure how well it was going to do. So it wasn't.
No, I do know they originally were planning on having Peeves for the first movie, but then they couldn't, and it was just too much.
Yeah, they cut. They had a character. They had somebody casted for him, and they cut him.
And Percy says he doesn't even listen to the prefix, and that the Bloody Baron is the only one who can control him. But I mean, obviously the Baron's not doing a very good job.
I don't think the Baron cares.
I don't think so either. Like, I feel like it's just like a very moot threat to say, well, the Baron's going to hear about this, and because that's not going to scare Peeves away.
But that's important. Again, that little side note is important later on.
Yeah.
So we've met Peeves.
Yep. They're crawling through the portrait hole, which Neville needs a leg up to get into it. So
they talk about that a lot.
So he's either like really short or like, because if you have to like get up into it, but you would think that they would make these things a little bit more accessible. And then it got me thinking to, we don't see any wizards who have any type of disability. And like in the Hogwarts mystery game that I have on my phone, there is, I think it's McNulty or something like that. He's in a wheelchair. And I think he's a Hufflepuff.
There are all sorts of like staircases and stuff, like the castle's not ADA.
Yeah, no, it's not. So I'm just wondering, like, I mean, even because I think the common room would be on the ground floor, but like nothing else. Like, how would he get to any of his classes and things like that? So
levitation charms.
You'd have to, but as a first year, you don't know those things right away. You'd have to get there.
I theorize differently on that. Like, I don't see. The wizards can fix things like broken bones and things like that very quickly. So I don't see a reason. Like, could they fix those things?
Because I mean, sometimes you're born with something like that.
But is it fixable with magic? We have the cure-all of magic.
Right. But then why would they have somebody in the...
And that I don't know. I
So I also like it also goes back to a little bit of representation.
I think that's more the point.
So because there's nobody represented with any special needs in the books.
No.
And even like when we get people who are born non-magic into a magical family, they're just like, well, you're just gonna have to live with muggles. Like, they really just cast them aside. And it's pretty shitty, or it's pretty it's pretty raw deal for them.
But I do think that is, the wizarding community is not very friendly to others. It's us versus them. And there's varying degrees, but even like Ron, whose family is arguably more tolerant, the way he views, say, house elves and goblins, and he very much sides with the wizards, whereas Hermione, who doesn't have that knowledge base, and same thing with Harry, like, he asked Dobby to sit down, like, just sit down, and he's like, I've never been asked to sit down by a wizard. He doesn't think twice about rescuing Griphook or freeing Dobby. Like, those are things that, like, he thinks those are fair and just. Right. Whereas Ron's like, well, why are we doing this? Huh? Well, they're just house elves. They're just goblins. The way werewolves are treated, Lupin. There's a lot of prejudice. Centaurs, mer people. There is clearly an us versus them mentality. The giants. And I like in book 7, I just listened to this, like Bill said, I would never say wizards are blameless. There's been wrongs on both sides. So I don't think that the magical creatures are necessarily blameless, but wizards, a majority of wizards think of the Malfoys wouldn't take ownership of anything that had been done wrong on the side of wizardry. So those are just kind of like interesting to think about, you know, the way they treat squibs. But if you think about it, like Mrs. Fig is still kept in the loop by Dumbledore.
Mm-hmm.
And Dumbledore arguably has a different viewpoint on that, given his sister.
Yeah.
Who is not a squib, but definitely had some issues.
Right. But that's the thing is because they keep her a secret, because if anybody knew what she was, if they found out about her situation, they would just chuck her into St. Mungo's.
Yeah. Which is
like
so sad.
It kind of reminds me of like the old days where like somebody who has like a mental illness, you're ill, we're just going to put you in Bedlam. Like,
here's the insane asylum.
Yeah.
Or like even physical illnesses, like, oh, you have something contagious. You just get locked up in there. We'll slip you some food. It's no different than the way the Dursleys treat Harry.
Yeah.
On the opposite side of that, like punishment for being a wizard.
Mm-hmm.
Different. Different is not always bad.
Right.
Different is seldom as bad as we want to think it is. My opinion.
Yeah. So Hogwarts can do better. The wizarding world can do better. Humans as large can do
a lot better.
Yeah.
Each of us individually, I know as a person, you constantly need to be reassessing your bias.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Best thing those anti-bias trainings ever taught us. Like, nobody is without bias.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody.
Right.
Keep assessing it and keep looking for it.
So then Harry goes off to bed, and Scabbers is chewing Ron's sheets, and Harry wants to ask him about dinner, but then he's just like too tired to even ask a question and just conks right out.
It's been a really long day. They had that extremely long train ride and this big feast that took a couple of hours. It's a very stressful day too. Like, he had to navigate getting onto the platform. He had to, like, these 2 chapters have all been one day.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been up since 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
He's so excited. And again, this is where Scabbers is doing something very rat-like, but you're like, why is Peter chewing on the sheets?
Right?
I like how he dreams about Quirrell's turban, though.
It's a very interesting dream. And Harry has just such the subconscious for these dreams. It's crazy how much they are. Like, it's just getting tighter and tighter. And then it's telling him to go into Slytherin. And then Malfoy's laughing at him and he becomes Snape, and the laugh turns into Voldemort's laugh. And then the green light comes. Mm-hmm. And then he just rolls over and forgets about the whole thing.
Which is what most of us do.
Yeah.
But again, this also is helping set us up as Snape is the bad guy.
Right.
But if we are open to the idea, Quirrell's turban is the prompting in here.
Right.
So I also like, just a note on setting, the common room, cozy round room full of squashy armchairs. And I like the common room is not this pretty place. It's cozy. The armchairs, like they've mentioned in other times, like they're squashy and they're old. They're not like these brand new, shiny, pretty things. Like, it's well worn, like your favorite chair. Mm-hmm. My favorite chair is older than I am. Still love it. Love to sit in it. It's just the perfect chair. It's ugly as all get out. 70s green. You know what that color is. You can picture it in your head when I say it's 70s green.
Yeah, everybody knows that color.
But it's cozy. It's my favorite chair. So again, for setting, just coziness. That's what I think of.
And the way like before going into it, they have to go through the portrait and they give the password to the fat lady.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we have that descriptor of her being fat and but nobody ever asks her name.
No,
like,
we never learn the fat lady's name. And I wonder if that's the name of the portrait, is the fat lady.
Oh, maybe.
That's my only theory, is that is what the portrait is called. But her friend has a name.
Violet. Yeah. Violet has a name.
Or Sir Cadogan. Like they have like several of the, but then there's other ones like, there was one of drunk monks.
Yeah.
That wine of the portrait of the drunk monks. Yeah.
So there were very few differences. Most of the differences, and I knew that this was going to happen, were when they were eating. Chips versus fries, mints versus peppermint, humbugs versus peppermints, pudding versus desserts, jelly versus jello, tea versus dinner, straight away versus right away, sports lessons versus gym. But the big one in this chapter, because there's always a big one, is they left out, in the audiobooks, they left out a sentence.
Ooh, they left out a whole sentence?
They left out a whole sentence. And it comes right after, and now there were only 3 people left to be sorted. So this next sentence is the one they left out. Thomas Dean, a black boy even taller than Ron, joined Harry at the Gryffindor table. That's the sentence that they left out.
They don't talk about Dean getting sorted?
Nope. So it goes straight from, and then there were only 3 people left to be sorted. Turpin Lisa became a Ravenclaw, and then it was Ron's turn. Which, if you add it up, though, Turpin Lisa, and then Ron, and then Zabini, those are 3 people. So if you add Dean, then there's 4.
Interesting. I do think that we have saved our discussion on sorting and our thoughts on the sorting and how you get sorted. We've saved that. We keep saying, oh, we'll talk about that when we get to the sorting chapter.
Right.
And I realized we've gone through the whole sorting chapter and I didn't talk about it at all.
I thought about that earlier too. So, because the thing is, and I think we might talk about it later in other books when other people get sorted, because the Sorting Hat, he has a song here, but he has different songs throughout the years. And they talk about when sorting at different times too.
They do.
Because when Dumbledore, I think it's in the next book, when he talks about it's your choice and where you want to be sorted. And in another part, it talks about how it's not necessarily, and I don't remember what book it is, but like, it's not really what your characteristics are, but it's what you, like the characteristics that you admire. So like Peter Pettigrew is a Gryffindor, but he is not brave at all.
No.
But he admires bravery. Percy is very ambitious, but he's not a Slytherin. Because he admires that bravery. And that family lineage, and like, so of his whole family being in Gryffindor. And so he has to uphold that.
I think there's an interesting concept with the family. Like they say family is, the whole family has been in Gryffindor. The whole family has been in Slytherin. And then there's some exceptions. It's interesting because, and again, imperfect. We're taking a test. We're not being sorted by the Sorting Hat and having our minds examined. Right. But interestingly enough, 5 girls, 4 of the 5 are Ravenclaws, 1's a Hufflepuff. But if you look at values, our family values, one of the biggest things that is of value and has been drilled into us is continuous improvement. And how do you continuously improve? Through learning. We have a strong academic bent. And the next value that is drilled, because the second piece to, you need to learn things to continuously improve. You also need to work hard. The youngest is a Hufflepuff. Hardworking, loyalty, and learning are our family values. And that's something like, if you ask, like, what are your values? Top of my head, faith, family, continuous improvement. three things that were drilled into us as children, and into our adult lives. And it carries into our houses. Like, that's how we're sorted. Like, and if you think of the Weasleys, they value that bravery, that putting others first, that like that risky behavior. You can see it in all of them, not so much Percy, but they're all like a little bit of risk takers. And my other theory on Gryffindors is everybody I know that's ADHD is in Gryffindor. My mom, my husband. We had that conversation too. It was interesting because in knowing that we were talking about sorting today, I was like checking, like, what houses is everybody in? I want to like make sure we all know our house. But it's also interesting in looking at like typecasting and what characteristics you look for in other people. So there's three of us that our significant others have taken the sorting hat test, and two of the three, they're in Gryffindor. So we have a type apparently as a family.
Yeah.
We're all Ravenclaws and we like Gryffindors.
So like the interesting part is because when we could take the test, we take it online and we're taking it as the age we are now. Mm-hmm. And they get sorted at age 11. So it's like, not like we go backwards in time, but also like, so who I was at 11 could be totally different than what I would test at now. But also, I mean, who I test at today, because you know how they do all those other tests about like your mood, like it's like, what are all those letters? E, N, J, F.
The Myers-Briggs test.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like, you could take that one day and then you could take it the next day and you could be a total different system of letters, because it just depends on what you're feeling that day. Because some days it's like, I am a little bit more introvert today. I'm a little bit more extrovert that day. It just, because you're constantly growing and changing as a person, ideally.
So I've taken it 3 times, the Myers-Briggs, over like once in college, once as a new mom, and once like just like a couple years ago. My letters are the same.
Oh, mine have changed.
But I am that person. Like that is, I have had the same best friends. I've acquired new friends, obviously, but I have had the same friends. Like my core group of friends, I met one in first grade, one in third grade. I've been with my husband since I was 15. I have a very like, consistency is a strong need for me. I'm not adventurous. I think risk averse is a good term.
I think now my mind is switching almost to like the Divergent series, and it's been a while since I've read that, so I don't remember what all of their, for lack of a better word, houses are, but however they divide each other. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I would definitely be Divergent. Like I'm so all over the place. Like I'm a little bit of everything, and it's it's crazy. So
I'm very static. I was actually having a conversation with a friend recently, because she's one of those people like, I'm planning my summer. We're planning our summers. We're talking about our summers. And I'm like, well, I want to get some meat chickens and I need to build a smaller coop for my layers. And, oh, this is the garden I'm putting in. All of it revolves around what I'm doing on my property. I'm not going anywhere. And like my big adventure might be going to visit my sister out of state. Like, again, it's very narrow focused. And she's talking about going to swim with the pigs in the Bahamas. And we were laughing because it is just very much my personality. I am very much I like predictability and pattern and consistency.
The brain is pattern seeking.
Yeah, my brain does not enjoy novelty as much as other people's does. I like my same. And that, but then again, I also have a very vivid imagination and I enjoy reading, which is my adventure. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I am the exception to that. It changes. So I probably would have been sorted as a Ravenclaw at 11.
Probably.
It's interesting though. My daughter will be 11 coming up, and she is very excited to take her quiz. We will let her sort.
That's
exciting. And she's so excited. I actually I might let her do it and record it.
Oh, that would be so exciting.
She's very, very excited about this. And she keeps asking me, how can I help, Mom? How can I help? I want to be on your YouTube. I want to be on your YouTube. She's very excited about it. So we're doing a Harry Potter themed birthday party. She's going to get sorted. Very, very exciting stuff. But it's interesting. One of our biggest values as a family that I push with my children is kindness. It doesn't matter, how you treat people says a lot about you. And I want you to be kind. You can, pretty fades, smarts aren't forever, be kind. If you can be anything, be kind. That's my daughter has a shirt that says, if you can, in a world where you can be anything, choose to be kind. So she very much identifies with the Hufflepuff house.
Yeah.
And my youngest wants to be in Hufflepuff because his aunt is in Hufflepuff. And I joke that it'd be a great place for him because it's next to the kitchens. The kid's always hungry.
And then there's that thing where, the dynamics change within houses, like Sirius. His family was all Slytherins. And then he's like, well, maybe I'll break tradition because he doesn't want to be like that. He has different values. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you'll have that. Like you have
the Patil twins.
Hmm?
The Patil twins.
Yes.
They're twins. They're like identical twins. And one is in Gryffindor and one is in Ravenclaw.
And like I said, like as a family of 5, 4 of us are Ravenclaw and 1 is Hufflepuff. And it's funny, my one sister, the middle one, she says, it says I'm in Ravenclaw, but I don't know. I identify very much with Hufflepuff. So she might've been one that would choose that Hufflepuff. And again, she's very loyal, very patient, and very hardworking.
When I've done it a few times, and most of the time it's Hufflepuff, once in a while it'll do Ravenclaw. But then it's like, well, I would like, if it took my choice into it, it would probably be Hufflepuff. So I don't want to answer a riddle every time I have to go through the door. Like, I don't know how Hufflepuffs have to go through their common room door. But I don't want it to be a riddle. Sometimes I enjoy the challenge and I love those types of things. I love doing logic problems for fun, but on a day-to-day basis, I'm gonna have like feeling weird, like run down, and I'm like, no, I just want to get in. Don't make me think. I gotta wait for somebody to let me in now. Come on.
See, I would enjoy the riddle. I would enjoy the challenge. Learning for the sake of learning, especially I can see younger me. Old me would be very tired and just go lay down, like, let me in, I want to go to bed. But younger me, I can see very much enjoying that challenge and that interest, like that.
Yeah. So like I love doing the trivia stuff, and I still do. And like a few years ago, my friend started doing trivia nights, and he is still doing it. And I won the other night, segueing. And I got a little Hedwig owl was the prize.
Beautiful.
So, isn't she? Love it. So I wanted to plug him real quick because I win from him often. He does trivia 3 times a week, and I usually win at least once a month. So it's Two Tone Gaming, and we'll probably throw a link in the description somewhere. So if you guys could check him out, it's super fun, and I enjoy doing it. I do it. I play 3 every time I can. So
what platform is he on? Is he on Facebook or?
Yeah, he's on Facebook.
I know you've told me, but my mom brain. What's the platform again? It's gonna be my new anytime I can't remember. So what's the platform number again?
Yeah, he's on Facebook, and like he does other gaming stuff too, and with other gamers as well. But I'm not into watching him play the shoot 'em ups, but I'm there for the trivia 3 times a week, every time he does it. So, and he gets people from like all around the world, and sometimes it depends on who the sponsor is, because like this time they offered Harry Potter stuff, and I think last week they were like Gryffindor socks and some other things like a wand or something. They've done Harry Potter tumblers as prizes before. Sometimes it's V-Bucks, sometimes it's Cash App, like sometimes it's it just depends on who on who's sponsoring it that night. It's varied, but this time it was something Harry Potter, and I won. So I was like super excited. I'm like, I got Hedwig.
She's beautiful. She needs to sit on the shelf with your Niffler now.
I know. I didn't put her up there yet because I wanted to showcase her. She's pretty.
Beautiful.
And she gets this like nice little cage to keep her in with like the background. Because it's so pretty. And then she's sitting on those books with the wand and the Marauder's map.
Gorgeous.
So, I gotta figure out how to put it back on. There we go. All right. Anything else?
I think that's all I had. I know I'm like, oh yeah, I've been waiting to talk about this. I have been so excited to talk about the sorting and to get into Hogwarts. And then I got into Hogwarts and I got so wrapped up in the setting that I was like, oh yeah, I wanted to talk about sorting.
Right. And I think now that we have been introduced to the sorting, we're probably going to talk about it more as we unveil some of the other characters and their personalities and stuff. Like when we actually meet Peter Pettigrew or getting into some of those things, we might talk about them more.
And I know there's a statement later on. I believe it's in book 7 because it's in the pensive, where Dumbledore says, I think we might sort too early.
Yeah.
Where
I don't even know how much I like the sorting based off of your personality either, because then it just keeps you with your own kind, and then you don't get to appreciate what other people have to offer to balance you out.
I also don't think that there's as much commingling between the houses as there should be. And we see in like at the end, they're all sitting, nobody's sitting according to houses.
Yeah.
But I even remember like in book 5, if everybody was walking around talking to people from other houses, it would look suspicious.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of, I also really enjoy the Percy Jackson books. Again, another kids book series that I like even as an adult, but they sit according to their parent at Camp Half-Blood. But at Camp Jupiter, they're divided into regiments and you're mixed. So interesting perspective, Roman versus Greek, and how that works out. So.
All right, everybody. Well, that is our perspective. Let us know yours in the comments below. Before we go, we would like to thank our editor, Alan, our families, our listeners. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and support. Until next time, stay safe, keep faith. Good night.